The Talmud tells the story of Rabbi Yochanan, who had this incredible gift. Yochanan was able to heal others with just a touch of his hand. When one of his friends would become sick, he would visit them, sit at their bedside, look into their eyes, and ask their permission to perform his miracle. And then he would take their hands and lift them up to perfect health. Once it happened that Rabbi Yochanan himself became ill. Thankfully, there was another sage, Rabbi Hanina, who also possessed the same incredible gift. He came to Rabbi Yochanan's bed, took his hands, and lifted him up. The other sages asked the obvious, glaring question. Why couldn't Rabbi Yochanan simply have healed himself? After all, he had the ability to heal others. Why couldn't he have just turned those magical powers back inward? They answer, a prisoner cannot free themselves from jail. In other words, we need each other. Judaism is a profoundly community-oriented religion. While some other faiths have idolized the holy man, meditating in solitude on a mountaintop, or the cloistered nun praying quietly alone in her cell, Judaism has never promoted the idea that we encounter God best in isolation. In fact, many of Judaism's most essential rituals, from chanting from the Torah to holding a wedding to saying Kaddish in memory of the dead, can only be done in the presence of a minyan, a quorum of at least 10 Jewish adults. At any time, but particularly when times are tough, our tradition teaches that we're obligated to show up for one another. As my synagogue rabbi and deeply respected teacher, Rabbi Sharon Brous, often says, in Judaism, we are commanded to err on the side of presence. In the story of Rabbi Yochanan and Rabbi Hanina, they are both practicing the mitzvah that's known as Bikur Cholim, the obligation to visit the sick. The Talmud teaches that when we do Bikur Cholim, we have the power to take away 1/60th of another person's suffering. That is to say, we shouldn't overestimate our own importance. Unless we have Rabbi Yochanan's magic hands, one visit isn't going to cure anybody of anything. But we can offer those we visit just a smidge of relief. We can make their load a fraction lighter. And sometimes, as I'm sure we've all experienced, that little bit makes all the difference. Just as it's a mitzvah to visit someone who's dealing with illness, the Jewish tradition has rituals to guide us in showing up for people during a time of grief and loss. After a person dies, their loved ones proceed as quickly as possible to arrange for the burial. It's considered a sign of kavod hamet, the honor due to the body of someone who's died, to speedily return them to the earth. But even in this, we err on the side of presence. A body is never to be left alone. Day and night, Jewish law requires that someone be present to sit guard, called in Hebrew, sitting shmirah, until the time of the funeral. In fact, the Hebrew word for a funeral, levaya, literally means to accompany. We show up for the living, and we also show up for the dead. Another expression of this ethos comes in the well-known final ritual that takes place at a Jewish funeral. After the eulogies have been delivered and the prayers recited, all of those gathered at the gravesite participate in placing earth directly onto the casket. One by one, beginning with the closest relatives, everybody comes up and takes a few shovelfuls from the ground. And collectively, we bury our own dead. After the funeral, Judaism lays out a series of structured stages of mourning, with the community continuing to play an essential role in supporting others through their grief. The first stage is called Shiva, and it lasts for 7 days. During Shiva, mourners are encouraged to stay at home and to allow the community to feed and comfort and care for them. We go to them to form a minyan so that they can say the Kaddish memorial prayer in their own comfortable space. During some of the hardest times that a person can go through, the practice of Shiva promises that they will not be alone. Just like with Bikor Cholim, we can't begin to take away all or even most of a person's pain, but at least we can surround them with the love that they need to help them get through it. On the morning of the final day of Shiva, there's a ritual that might be my favorite in all of Jewish practice. After the mourners say Kaddish, their friends are supposed to literally take them by the hand and lead them outdoors and accompany them for a short walk around the block. Just as we escorted a body to its final resting place, we escort the mourner now back into the world of the living. After a week cocooned at home, they should see the blue sky and feel the sun and know that, as hard as it is to believe, the world continues to turn. But they don't have to face it alone. We are right there walking with them. After 7 days, Shiva gives way to Shloshim, the first month of mourning. During this time, while the mourner may return to work and other activities, they're encouraged to visit a synagogue every single day to say Kaddish together with a minyan. They may be getting back to the real world, but they still need a safe place to come where they can be seen and supported. For some kinds of losses, people will continue to say Kaddish not just for the month, but for nearly a year as they slowly begin to heal. Even as the most acute phase of grief fades, our sense of loss never entirely leaves us. And so every year on the anniversary of a death, what's called the Yahrzeit, we light a special 24-hour candle and go to synagogue to rise for the Kaddish. Whether it's been 5 years or 50, we still need set times to acknowledge how much we still miss them and to be recognized and seen by others in our continuing grief. When the temple still stood in Jerusalem, all Israelites, wherever they lived in the land, were required to appear there 3 times a year, at the harvest times, to bring their regular sacrifices. They would make their way up the Temple Mount's monumental steps, and they would enter through an archway and turn to the right. They would walk a circular, counterclockwise path through the stations of the temple ritual before exiting out a door near where they came in. However, if you were in mourning, you entered the same arch, but you turned to the left and walked against the flow. This was called walking the mourner's path, and everyone who saw you coming would know that you had a broken heart. And they would bless you with these words: "May the one whose spirit dwells in this house bring comfort to you, to your family, and to all who mourn." Life is too hard to do alone. In our times of illness and grief and deepest dark, we need to be seen and acknowledged and held. Our people's rituals teach us that when we're able to be there for others, we should always err on the side of presence. We can only hope and trust and pray that when it's our time of need, others will do the same thing for us.
Yainai,